Hello everyone! Welcome to some more Let's Play Armageddon Empires with me, your host Tim. Oh my god, it has been like a year and a half since I last played, and if I don't move the cursor around like a crazy person, Virtual Dub won't realize there's any video here and won't record and won't compress it. Hey everyone! Right, so, holy crap! If you are unfamiliar with Armageddon Empires and what the game will be like, then this video is probably for you. We're going to be making a new deck in this video and covering some of the nuances, and in particular the stats and specifications on the cards that will comprise the army and force we intend to play the game with. Know that there will be several different decks I'll probably create. My intention is at the moment probably to play 25, maybe less than that, maybe a little more than that, videos for each of the different factions in the game to show them off and show what they're able to do. If you don't care about deck creation, in particular for the Human Empire or the Imperium of Man, whatever it's called, you can just skip this video altogether and wait for the next one to come up where I take that deck into battle. Though I would probably recommend you look down in the comment section where at the very least you'll be able to take a peek at the cards I've added to the deck, so you have some idea of what the deck is comprised of. Also remember, everyone, that I have modded my version of the game. I did so many years ago, adjusting some of the stat lines for the Machine Empire. So that propagated all throughout the game. I haven't touched it since, but I remember that those were present. So, just a heads up about that as well. Alright, so what the heck is Armageddon Empires before we go ahead and create a deck? Armageddon Empires, the best way to describe it, it is the most, oh my goodness, the best turn-based strategy game I have played. Yes, this is an incredible turn-based strategy. Well, not the best, but it's right up there with some of the best I've played. This will feel very much like a board game, very similar to the board game Titan, if you've ever played that one, especially with all the die rolling that you're going to be making. But the combat itself is a little bit different. There's lots of secondary stat lines onto different creatures and cards that we'll have, and thus it makes it a little more unique. Let's also make sure my music volume is low. Yes, okay, I think that's good. We have to basically, for the game, we've got to assemble an army, and we do that by picking what cards that we want to have in our deck. During the game, we will be drawing through this deck and deploying the cards onto the game board and using them to fight our enemies, develop different technologies, move heroes around to develop different tactics to use during battles, etc., etc. The winner in this game is the one left standing. There is no diplomacy, you versus anyone else who's out there. The game also features an expansion. As usual, I won't be playing the expansion at the start, but probably near the end of all the factions, I'll fire up the expansion. I think that would be, what's it called? Not Tip of the Spear. I forget what it's called right now. What's that called? Cult of the Wastelands is the expansion. So I'll be waiting to do that until later on in the game series. Alright, I'm going to quickly check to see how my volume is coming out with the game, and I'll be right back, and we'll go ahead and create a deck. And I'll try to cover as quick as I can the different factions and so on for it. A heads up again, by the way, everybody, that there's going to be a lot here for deck creation. Like, literally, this is probably going to take an hour for me to make a deck and cover everything there is to cover about the game. Alright, so I'll be right back. Let me check on my voice volume. Hey, everybody. Alright. Sounds like my voice is coming out okay. Let's go ahead and create ourselves a new deck. So the very first thing we're presented with is which faction we wish to play. So I'm going to try to cover the thematic flavor of each faction and give you a quick synopsis on what I feel about each faction. And by that I mean how the deck or the faction tends to play and what their strengths and or weaknesses are. So the Empire of Man, thematically, that consists of, let's think here, what would it be like? It'd be like leading an army of the Imperial Guard, along with the Warhammer 40k Space Marines, an armored company, and air support. The Machine Empire is Terminators and robots. In particular, robots that look like spiders. Pretty awesome. The Xenopods are Cthulhuesque creatures, or various horrible monstrosities, or biologically created warfare engines. The Free Mutants are basically how to describe them? They remind me of the Shamali from Warwind in a bit, in that they are humanoid-looking with 4 arms. They also love dinosaurs and ride them into combat. Yep, yeah, that's right. The way these different factions play, the Empire of Man is kind of an all-comers deck. You can build it to one of several different ways. Either make it fully full of tanks, you can go infantry, go a mixture of both. The weaknesses are that their heroes are not that spectacular compared to, say, the Xenopods or the Free Mutants, but they're decent. Like, all their units are decent, all their armored company is decent. Their units have a good amount of either attack and or defense. Nothing spectacular that I can think of, but nothing that's lacking either. Their air support is phenomenal, and their research is also very good. The Machine Empire's units are a bit more on the expensive side and slower than the Empire of Man, but they're also more resilient with more defense dice. That'll make sense when we actually get to it. They have the least amount of generals, if I recall correctly, compared to the other factions. Their technology, but those heroes can do a little more than some of the other heroes can do, if I recall correctly. They have phenomenal stealth detection units, and many of them, if I recall. Some of their more powerful units are actually very strong as well, but very expensive to get them on the field. Their technology is also pretty decent. Their air support is also really great. They have a orbital strike unit, which can attack an enemy from anywhere on the map, so that's really good. The Xenopods have great units and fantastic heroes. Holy crap. Fighting the Xenopods is going to be hard mode when you see them on the field. They are lacking, however, any nuclear answer to an enemy. All the factions have nuclear missiles they can eventually get to, research, and deploy. And all it takes is one nuclear strike at your HQ, your headquarters, to make you lose the game. The Xenopods have no way to do this unless they can find some sort of nuclear deterrent, or in this case, a weapon, out in the game world when we begin playing. So, what they gain by extremely strong armies, they lack in the ability to deal with nuclear armament. They also have some decent strike craft, air fighters as well. I think their research, though, is just... no, their research can be strong as well. So, really powerful group, I think, the Xenopods. The Free Mutants are actually extremely strong as well. So, the Free Mutants are very fast-hitting. They want to win the game as quick as possible. Their units are very, very fast and do good amount of damage. The term glass cannon comes to mind. The Free Mutants, though, are lacking any air units whatsoever. So if, you won't be able to really... They don't have any air support. No helicopters, no stealth fighters. They don't even ride pterodactyls or anything like that. They got nothing of the sort. But they do have missile launchers and can build nuclear weapons. The Free Mutants also have some slower but very strong units as well. But for the most part, the Free Mutants are a fast-hitting, fast-moving, can't take without too much defense. But they have a lot of hit points to make up for that. So even though you'll hit them repeatedly, they can take the hits in the hope that they can kill you first. Their technology is also fairly decent, but I don't think it's as good as the Empire of Man. Alright, well with that done, let's go ahead and select the Empire of Man. Alright everybody, welcome to the deck creation screen. We're going to cover this as quick as possible. So up here we have the name of the deck. This is new deck. In fact, let's just go ahead and save it as a human condition. It's 175 and 10. I'll explain the numbers in a few minutes. This area of the screen is reserved for when you begin adding cards to the deck. Their portrait, or picture, will show up here. Down here is the stat line of the card. These are all the different categories of cards you can add to your deck. This tab lets you switch between cards and tiles. I'll explain the difference in a little bit. These are the total number of cards you have in the deck, and the total number of points that your cards are worth. So, I can't think of very many card games I've played where there's a point total. For the most part, you have, like, I seem to remember in Magic the Gathering, this was years ago, you were limited to like, or the minimum amount of cards you could have in your deck was 60. Maybe it was 40, I can't remember now. I can't remember. And so you always tried to get the best cards imaginable in your deck. In this game, the cards are a little more balanced than that. Because each card... Well, I'm sorry, I'm covering total cards so far. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's too late. We'll keep talking as if I was talking about total points instead. Each card has a point cost for you to add it to the game. And as you begin adding them, that point total increases, obviously. You need to keep this in mind, because when you play a game, you're going to be limited to a maximum amount of card points. And it comes in 3 tiers. 175, 225, and 275. Tiles will work the same way, with 5, 10, and 15. Right. You can also see the amount of cards you have in your deck. I'm sorry, I started talking about that, but then leaped over to total points. If you've played any deck building game before, then you are probably aware that you want to keep the amount of cards in your deck kind of low, so you have a good chance of drawing the cards that you want. However, in this game, we could lose cards by attrition, and we may end up having to fall back to secondary support cards instead. So I find that it's... And in addition to that, cards are very expensive, some ones to play. So for example, if you have a deck consisting of maybe like 20 units, and they're all extremely strong, but your enemy has a bunch of weak units, they could wander into your HQ and defeat you before you're able to muster any type of defense. So it's a good idea to keep your total cards as low as possible, but what is possible may change depending upon the army that you're facing off against. And these are tiles. We'll cover tiles in a little bit. Just know that, as before, there's a total number of tiles and total points. But the total tiles is limited to 5 tiles maximum. There's no reason to worry about tiles either. We'll cover tiles in just a few more seconds. In fact, we'll start with tiles after I cover the rest of this screen. Down here, we have the number of hero units, number of heroes added to our deck, number of units added to the deck, etc., etc. Heroes do not fight. They lead armies, but they don't participate in the battle itself. This is not Warcraft 3. The only thing I can think of that would be remotely similar to a hero... well, it's not really the same, but it'll have to do. It would be how Hearthstone, how you pick a... I haven't played Hearthstone, but I've seen a few games played of it. How you pick, like, you want to be the hunter or the paladin. It's similar to that, but not really, because you can select from quite a few heroes and add them all to your deck. But when they're leading the army, they'll add special perks to that army that they're in charge of. Units, these are everything that can make an attack or to be deployed on the field, which is not a hero. So this would be like your Imperial Infantry. This guy right here, these Imperial Grenadiers, they are a unit. So is this Reaper artillery piece. As is the Imperial Recon. All of them are units. Heroes are not. Facilities are different strongholds. These consist of the infrastructure, which generates resources for you. Basically, if I'm trying to talk like, I guess Magic the Gathering, that would be like supplying you with mana. CI3 facilities, actually we'll cover all this in a little bit. Just know that these are all your structures. They generally do not fight, with the exception of anti-missile and anti-aircraft weaponry. And air. Air power cards are not units, although they certainly look like them. Air support in this game is not something which is deployed to your army and travels with that army on the board. Rather, this is deployed and makes a single strafing run at the enemy. An equivalent would probably... I think in the Dawn of War 2 game, you could summon like a strafing run. Something would go across the screen and drop a bunch of bombs. That's basically what your air support is. We'll cover that more in depth in a little bit too. Alright, I'm going to quickly start and stop the recording because I really like how this is coming out so far, and I like to not have to redo this part. Give me a few seconds. Okay, right. So, let's begin adding things to our deck. So I named this the Human Condition because that'll be a nice reminder to me that I'm playing a human deck. I've named it 175 and 10. I always do this when I make my decks. Or rather, I give it 2 numbers. The first is the amount of point of card points I'm aiming for, and the second is the amount of tiles I'm aiming for. Let's start with the tiles. Tiles represent game pieces. These are placed on the board. The game itself will consist of a group of hexes, just like this, laid out randomly. When you begin a game, you will be selecting all the tiles you possess and placing them next to each other on a board. You don't know exactly where the game will spawn you, I believe. You just know where you want these placed in relation to each other. The tiles themselves have some stats that we need to pay attention to. First off, they have a point cost. So if I want to add the staging area to my deck, it will cost me 5 tile points to do so. Next, this hex generates these resources each turn. Tiles on the game board can generate resources. They consist of human, material, energy, and tech. Cards that you play require these resources to deploy them from your hand onto the game board. We'll cover that a little bit more when we get to units. This card generates 1 human, 1 material, 1 energy, and 1 tech every turn. However, you don't get that mana, basically, or these resources, unless you have a resource collector in that hex that is able to collect them. So that is an important thing to remember as you go forward and we play the game, why I'm trying to get certain hexes. In this case, the staging area is the basic type of tile, producing 1 of each resource for you. Here we have the abandoned factories. As we can see, this also has a point cost, its name, how much resource this one generates. We also see a movement cost, so just know that lower is generally better if you're trying to move your army through it, but higher movement costs are better when you're trying to prevent the enemy from going through it. Basically, movement cost of 1 is like open terrain. Movement cost 2 would be rough terrain. Movement cost 3 would be, not dangerous, but extremely difficult and rugged terrain. Mountainous or toxic swamps, for example. The defense bonus is extra dice that your units gain if your units come under attack, well, in this area. Realistically, I guess, technically, it should add the defense dice to both sides, because why can't both sides take advantage of it, but that's not the way it works. All of these hexes have different amounts of points and different unit costs. In this case, the ruins here is going to cost us 7 points if I want to add it to the deck. You might be thinking, well, why do that, Tim? It generates 1 of each resource, and the staging area costs 5 and generates the same amount. Well, this also takes 3 movement points for an enemy to enter it, and gives us 2 defense bonus. Oh, right, something else for the movement cost. Supply. Supply is going to be difficult to talk about until we're in the game. Just know that if you're starting out in the ruins, it's very likely that the enemy's forces will be out of supply range when they attempt to attack it, at least at the beginning portions of the game. This can give you an advantage because it means that your forces will be hopefully much stronger than them if they are out of supply. It also gives all units in the ruins 2 defensive bonus, making them more likely to be able to survive an attack. We have the crater base, which is also 7 points, only 2 movement and 1 defense, and only 2 resources. I'm sorry, but it does give you 2 material resources, and the ruins only gave you 1. I generally like starting with the crater base for my human decks, so we're going to go ahead and do that. We have an abandoned base. This gives you no extra defense or movement points to help you with enemy supply, and it also costs 8 points, but you get 1 extra human resource. We have the Big Dig, which gives you a total of, I think, 4 defensive dice, plus 2 movement at 9 cost for 2 materials. You can start with 3 humans for the city-state, also gives you 2 defensive, 1, etc., etc. I don't think you guys need me to cover all of it now that I've explained it a little bit. And finally, Vault 13. Holy crap, I actually should pick this, considering what other game I'm uploading. That's really tempting. That's really tempting. You know what? Let's do it. Normally I would not do this, but we'll do it in this case. So, we now have a single 10-point tile. While we're here, though, we're going to cover some of the other tile categories. You can add tiles which generate other resources as well to your total tiles here. Note that they cost additional points, so if I want to play this deck at the 175 and 10 level, I cannot add any of these tiles to it. And these, just like the other tiles, they go up in points, etc., etc. So, to generate one that generates extra material and energy, it would cost us 4 points to add this tile to our deck. You can also add cards that have minefields, and they come in 3 categories. Movement cost 1, movement cost 2, or movement cost 3. The minefields here, I think, are just explosive, and they can damage any enemy that walks over them. Minefields will roll a strength 10 attack against the enemy that walks into it. And finally, if you don't even want minefield tiles, you can just spend a point or 2, or 3, to add just a normal hex to your tile tableau. But we're going to stick at 10 total points with just Vault 13, at least for this deck to start with. Next. Oh, right. Something else, by the way. This also can be considered bad because of 3 movement points. That means it's going to take 3 movement points for us to move in here if it comes under attack as well. So getting back to Vault 13 might be a little tricky once we leave it. Okay, so with our tiles done, let's begin covering cards. I'm going to actually put several breaks in this video just to give myself my voice a rest. But let's go ahead and start. So, we've got units first. So let's cover them, at least in this order. Oh, right, I didn't actually explain this either. When we select a category, it's going to pop up another tab here. This consists of this type of card, the Emperor's Own here. And these numbers, this is the maximum number of this card we're allowed to add to our deck, 10. And the 0 is the number of them we currently have added to the deck, 0. Oh, right, I don't even know if I covered this. This big empty space, this is obviously used, well, you've seen it in the tiles now, for you to drag and drop your cards around and admire them. You can't smell them like you could the other collectible card games I've played, like L5R and the like. But, hey, it's close enough, I suppose. Right, let's cover the Imperial Infantry, and we'll cover what the stats this card has. So, just as tiles, it has a point cost to add it to the deck. Next is the name of the card, the Emperor's Own. We can see the faction it belongs to is the Imperials. This is a unit card and an infantry card. These are the class or type of card, or all the types of cards this card in particular qualifies as. These are the resources it costs to play from our hand to the game board. We have to have 4 action points, we'll cover action points later, 3 human resources, 3 material, and 2 tech to take this card from our hand and play it onto the game board. Know that cheaper numbers here are basically easier to deploy, but does not necessarily mean a better card. More expensive numbers here, or the higher numbers, generally mean the card's worth more, and thus more powerful on the field, for the most part. Ooh. These are the amount of hit points the card has. Once a card is reduced to 0, it is dead. Cards do not regenerate their hit points naturally. You will have to heal them yourself. It'll make sense when we get to the game itself. Know that some cards can regenerate themselves if they have the Regenerator special ability, or regen, I think. Attack and defense. Higher numbers are better. This represents the amount of dice you roll when attempting to attack the enemy or attempting to defend against an enemy's attack. We'll cover what this does more in depth when we get to our first combat. Just know that higher numbers are obviously better. Same for resistance. Resistance number of dice this unit rolls when attempting to resist an enemy attack that consists of psychic powers, poison, toxin, or other similar effects. This is the amount of hexes the unit is able to move through before it has to stop. For example, the game board may look something like this when we get into it. The Emperor's Own could move from Vault 13 into this desert and then this one, because deserts only have 1 movement cost to move into them. If they wanted to move into the crags, they couldn't do it if they moved into the desert first, because the crags is 2 movement points to enter into. Thus, higher movement means that your army is more mobile on the field. This has, to my knowledge, no effect in combat itself. Range. When combat begins, what's going to happen is that our cards will be on one side of the board and the enemies on the other. They've split into 2 halves of two different fields. For example, something like, but let's pretend that Emperor's Zone and this Reaper are the enemy cards. And let's pretend I could deploy Vincent Mudge down here. Actually, that's going to be confusing when I get down to it. So let's actually change and add a Puma down here. Because the Emperor's Zone has a range of 1, it can attack only the Imperial Engineers. If it had a range of 2, it could actually attack the Puma. If it had a range of 3, it could be deployed in the back rank and attack the Puma. Now, there's a great deal more I'm not covering when it comes to combat. I just want to cover what the range number means. So, as usual, when it comes to the numbers in this game, higher is better. After range comes any special abilities that this card in particular has. We'll go over them more in depth when we begin adding cards to our deck. After unit cards, we have air power. These are going to look very similar to our units, but they actually work quite differently in the game. So they have a point cost, their name, what faction, the type of card it is. This is an attack card and an aircraft. Now, that might seem a little weird because units make attacks. But this card, it's very similar to... If you played Gwent, this would be similar to, like... Oh, what's that? Incinerate? Is that the card I'm thinking of? Or Muzzle? This is basically... It's an instant. But you can use it multiple times. Whenever you want to use this card, it will cost you 2 action points and 3 resources to use this card to make an attack against an enemy. It has 3 hit points, so like our unit cards, it can sustain damage, and only if it's outright destroyed will you lose it. Like units, it does not repair its damage normally. You're going to have to actually repair it in the game if it takes damage. It has its attack defense. Range for cards, though, does not mean what side of the board it can attack. This is how many hexes away from I think from a supply facility that it can reach out to hit an enemy. So this unit, for example, with a unit cost of 4... Ah, darn it. Oh, it's a minefield. Well, you guys... darn it, it's too late now. I've already started. There we go. With a unit cost of 4, it would be able to reach this hex from Vault 13 to make attacks on enemies who might be there. So it's basically the strike range of the card. It also has fate points. Fate's really tricky to describe. Let's just say that it lets you reroll dice when certain conditions are met. So, and in particular, you will want to reroll any misses or failures that happen. It also has a Harm 6. This is its special ability. And for some reason, some of the air cards actually have a small description under them. Not many cards actually have that. I think, like, only the air power cards do, and 1 general in the game, I think. After air power comes your hero units, or I'm sorry, your heroes, in 4 different flavors: generals, scouts, agents, and intellects. Generals are going to be leading your armies in combat. Oh, we should cover all the different types up here. We'll get to that when I start adding units, I suppose. Actually, then let's keep covering just the stat lines, and we'll cover the categories once I'm done with the stat lines. So for heroes, they have a point cost, their name, faction. This is a hero, and he's a general. He's unique, so there's only going to be 1 of him possible in the deck. He costs 1 action point and 2 human resources to deploy from my hand onto the game board. He can take 4 wounds before he's dead. He's got a command rate of 8. This is the amount of units he's allowed to have in his army. He has 4 fate, That's useful for leading his army. It lets his army have a slightly better chance of beating the enemy with the enemies rolling really well. 2 resistance, again, this is for his different types of poison or psionic attacks. How fast this unit moves on the game board, and any special abilities that he has. Scouts, agents, and intellects follow the same type of deal. Finally, we have strongholds. Oh, and facilities. I guess it would be best if we... I guess strongholds will do. So, you must have a stronghold in your deck. You don't have a stronghold, you can't play the game. The Imperial Palace costs 0 points. And I guess we should still cover the stat line, Tim. You're getting ahead of yourself. So 0 points in this case. The point cost to add this card to your deck. Card name, faction, type of unit it is. It's a facility. It's a stronghold. It's unique. It costs 0 resources to deploy from our hand into the game, because this card must be deployed onto the game board before the game is even started. You'll see that when we actually start up a new game. How many hit points the structure has before it's destroyed, in case the enemy decides to use sabotage to try to blow it up, or use airstrikes to target it. This is the level of the upgrade. Higher level means that you have more space in the facility to store additional facility cards, and generally represents how strong the card will be, hit point wise and so on, when it's deployed. Number of upgrades means that you can upgrade this, right click and select upgrade it twice, giving you up to 2 more slots in the facility for additional facilities to be deployed to it. This is probably really confusing. You'll see it when we get to the game. Just know, as usual, higher is better. Defense, because when an enemy attacks it with aircraft, for example, it will roll defensive dice to try to avoid getting hit. Resistance is used for, I think, sabotage attacks, and any special abilities this has. All the facilities work the same way. Alright, everyone. I'm going to quickly stop here, and I'll be back to finish up, and we'll begin covering units, and then we'll begin adding units to our deck. Okay, everyone. I'm back. Let's pick up where we left off. It's been a week, so you're going to have to bear with me here. So we covered tiles already. We covered all the types of cards and what their stats and numbers mean over there on the left. We're now going to go ahead and begin adding cards to the deck. Finally! So let's get started. And I think I said I wanted to start on our units, but I've changed my mind, and we're instead going to start with our facilities. This is because every deck I make tends to have the same type of facilities in them, more or less. So, the very first thing we need to do is add a stronghold. Strongholds, if I didn't mention it before, is your starting headquarters. If this card is ever destroyed, you have lost the game. Let me rephrase. If whatever facility is currently your headquarters is destroyed, you have lost the game. Throughout the game, you'll be able to move your headquarters to a different location, but it requires a great deal of action points and a significant amount of resources to do this. However, you still may discover that you want to do so, especially if you're worried that the enemy has located you and will annihilate you. So to try to give yourself a little extra time, you may want to move it. This is especially true if the enemy plans on nuking your starting location. You definitely want to nuke it if you're afraid that will happen. Okay, right. So, we have 3 types of strongholds to choose, and all the factions start with 3 types of strongholds. They're a little different depending upon the faction, what purpose they serve. All the factions have a 0-point cost stronghold of some sort. All these will start at level 2, I believe, and they generally will have the same type of stats over here. They'll have hit points, probably, I think they all have 8. 2 upgrades, start at level 2, 4 defense, 3 resistance, HQ, collect 1 of each type of resource, activates as a supply, and a barracks. So, a supply means that this location is able to increase the range at which units you possess are considered in supply. Units fighting outside of supply suffer significant disadvantages. Their attack and defense strength are greatly reduced, and their movement is reduced to, I think, 1 point. So, you always want your units to be in supply. You can consider it the amount of control that you have over the current game board, or the world that you're deploying in. This also is a barracks. This means that we can deploy troops from our hand into this facility when playing the game. Only a handful of units and or heroes allow you to deploy them anywhere on the board. You will almost always have to deploy them into a barracks card. At the 175 point level, I always choose the 0-point cost stronghold. Because at this point level, I need these extra points freed up for other units, heroes, or what have you. At least this is the way I play. The Imperial Citadel here is significantly stronger with 12 structure points. Starts at level 1 and has 2 upgrades available to it. It is stronger with 2 more defense dice and 2 more resistance dice. It also is an HQ. It also can collect 1 of each resource. This unit is not necessarily destroyed if it's hit with a nuclear weapon. However, that's not going to protect any units you have at this facility. It's quite possible that the nuclear bomb or torpedo or rocket, whatever it is that hits your base, will wipe out everything you have here. And then the enemy waltzes in and takes it the next turn anyway. So this basically can give you 1 more turn to quickly move your base somewhere else should it ever be hit by the nuclear weapon. However, now that I've seen this happen, it was obviously a few years ago, but I don't like Hardened as much as I used to. It can be useful, and you're going to pay a lot of points for it. This is 10 points added to your deck. That is not an insignificant number of points for a card. It also is a supply in a barracks. You then also have the Imperial Fortress. 10 points as well, not hardened. However, this version of it has an anti-air and anti-missile capability. You can only hit air cards with cards that can actually strike them. For the most part, this is only going to be anti-air cards. There are a few facilities that actually possess this. There's a few units. Sometimes there's some technology you can create to give a unit this capability, and or some other air power cards will be able to also attack aircraft or helicopters. This is also able to strike down missiles. So this gives you a chance to shoot down enemies. Now, you might think this is a great thing, and it is. It gives you a chance, but this chance is very low with only 4s. Every time you upgrade your base here, and it can be upgraded 3 times, these will actually increase. I didn't realize it was 3 times for this. That's pretty powerful, actually. It also has slightly more defense and resistance than the Imperial Palace, but again, we're playing a 175-point deck. That means Imperial Palace is what I'm taking. Wow, it is really windy outside today. Alright, sorry about that. Next, military facilities. These will include areas where you can extend your supply range. You can, as a cheap option, these will be the fire bases. A stronger version of it, which actually could operate as a second version of your stronghold, should you desire it. Some defensive structures, and minefields. Not all the factions have minefields and or defense systems like this, but most do. So first off, our first option here is the more expensive Imperial Keep. This is basically kind of a copy of our Imperial Palace, as you can see. 8 structure points, 4 and 4. The difference between the two is that this isn't an HQ. And this means that, you're obviously not deploying it for free at the start of the game. You'll be deploying it during the game. However, it's a really nice card should you find a resource hex that is producing lots of resources. I generally add 1 of these to my deck at the 175 point level. Next, we have Imperial Fire Bases. These do not collect any resources, unlike the Imperial Keep and Palace. You notice that they do not have RC in them. They do count as a supply in a barracks, though. They're significantly cheaper to deploy and to add to your deck, coming in at only 2 points. These allow you to increase the range at which you can threaten enemies, basically. And I tend to add 3 of them to my deck at this point level. There gives me 4 total cards in my deck, not including my Imperial Palace itself, which will allow me to try to control the map, or to reach out and take the enemy location. This should be enough, assuming I'm playing the 175 point level on a small or medium map size. Probably just a small map size for that matter. Bigger maps, you would want more of these cards in your deck. Sometimes, I'll go ahead and add some air defense systems. Now, this is not a, how should I describe it? The Imperial Keep and Fire Base can be deployed from your hand to the game board. The defense systems, though, cannot. Notice a slightly different color? This, well, not all cards are like this, but I'm going to have to try to describe it as best I can. This card is deployed into one of these structures to help defend it. You can't just stick this out on the world wherever you want it. So sometimes I'll add a few air defense systems in order to give my facilities additional defenses, or them where they're lacking. Because these can't be, and these can't be moved when placed, none of these can be moved when placed. So keep that in mind. Once you decide, like, I'm defending this location, please be sure first that it's actually going to be threatened with missiles or anti-air attacks. I'm not sure if I'll add these to the deck at the moment. They are 3 points per card, and I would generally add 2 of them. We'll hold off on that. We also have minefields. Some of the factions have minefields. These must be deployed onto a empty hex. I don't think you can put them into a facility. In order to deploy them, a hero must deploy them. That's going to be a general, scout, agent, or intellect. Or an engineer can drop them onto the game board. You can't just place them onto any hex, even if it's in your supply. And I think it has to be in supply for you to drop them in it as well. Yes, Camouflage 5, which means the enemy just simply, unless the enemy has detection capabilities or reconnaissance, they will not be able to detect it naturally right off the bat. It also is anti-personnel, which means that this minefield that the humans produce is not designed to take out enemy tanks or enemy heavy infantry, power armor, or whatever their equivalent would be. It can't take out monstrosities and biomech. It does less damage to them on the Xenopod army. But it would do extra damage against unarmored targets. So that would be infantry, for example. I have not yet made up my mind if I'm going to add any of these to this deck. Actually, you know what? It would probably make sense for us to add... We'll add 2 air defense systems. Why not? We have Vault 13. We can pretend that it's a heavily armored military installation. Next. For minefields, I think we'll skip minefields at the moment. Research facilities. This would take a long time to explain, and it's best just to show you in-game. Just know that if you don't have any research labs, then you'll have to find one out there in the world if you want to be able to produce technology cards. Or, genetic cards. Technologies are special, unique cards, which you don't add to your deck here. You can create them by spending resources and rolling dice in an attempt to get successful. You can produce new types of weapons, you can produce certain types of mutagens to increase the combat capabilities of various vehicles or your troops, or give additional intellect and make your heroes even better in combat. You can produce stealth suits, different types of nuclear weapons, etc., are all produced through research facilities. Or you have to find them in the game world itself. I generally really like research, so we add 2 of these to my starting deck. In this way, at least I have a chance to draw them. Also note, by the way, that our air defense system, note that it can be upgraded twice, making it stronger. The research labs can also be upgraded twice, making them stronger. Your Imperial Keeps can be upgraded twice. Your fire bases cannot be upgraded at all. This means that we can't... I think the Imperial fire bases come with 1 empty slot. Yeah, I could drop an air defense system in one, but then I couldn't drop an Imperial research lab into it. And yes, these also must be placed into a facility card. If a lot of this isn't making any sense, everybody, don't worry. You can come back and watch this later afterwards. Like, oh, I understand now. But I'm trying my best. Please bear with me here. Alright, so, War Colleges. War Colleges let you produce tactic cards. When you roll dice against your enemy, you're going to have to roll a certain number of successes in order to hit them. Like, you roll a 6-sided dice, a 5 and a 6 basically is a success. Your enemy then rolls defense dice, with a 5 and 6 being a defense. A successful defense. You must have more successes than your enemy to inflict damage on them. And you'll inflict damage on a 1-to-1 ratio unless your unit has some special ability on them. Like a hypertoxin or some other, like, mega damage or whatever it's called, to inflict more damage with each success. Tactic cards let you either re-roll your enemy's cards, successful dice, or give you successful dice, or let you re-roll yours. They're very useful. They also, because technology requires you passing success checks just like this, they can also be used on your research attempts. Just like tech cards, or technology, I like having at least 2 war colleges in my deck to start, in order to give me this bonus. For the humans, technology, one of their technologies is a tactical nuke. It can be attached to an infantry unit, by the way, and if it actually does any damage to whatever it strikes, it kills it, no matter how much life it has remaining. It's an amazing technology card, but it can only also be used once, and then the technology, successful or not, is discarded. The War College, for example, you can get a card which lets you re-roll your entire enemy's defense roll. Very useful in tandem with the Tactical Nuke if the enemy goes crazy trying to defend its unit. Infrastructure. Not every faction has infrastructure cards, and when they do, they can be a little different. In this case, the humans can have the option to add industrial complexes to their decks. This generates one material and one energy resource per turn, and I believe not only does it generate it, but it also is automatically collected and added to your totals. So this is a really nice way to add materials and energy to your deck. They're expensive, though, coming in at 5 points for each one. That said, I'm going to go ahead and add, I think, 2 of these to our starting deck. Finally, all the factions have a C3I facility. I think that's Command, Control, and Communications? Command, Control, Communications. Holy crap! I remembered it. Anyway, they all operate a little differently, but they all kind of have the same abilities. It's just you might have to upgrade them to unlock the other ones. Oh, and by the way, you'll note that the industrial complexes cannot be upgraded. This is what they do, the end. You can't make them generate more resources. The Intelligence Center here basically makes it more difficult for the enemy to do any espionage or sabotage in the hex that this is located in. So this adds to the defense of the facility that it's in. In addition, when it's deployed, we will earn extra action points each round. This means that we don't necessarily have to go first in order to do a lot of things on our turn. The more of these we have deployed onto the battlefield, the better it is. They can be upgraded, which will increase the AP bonus, and may also increase the counter intel or give other bonuses for deploying them. I can't remember off the top of my head what the humans do. Like the other cards I add to my deck, I like having 2 of these at the 175 point level. Done. And that will be all the facilities that we will add to the human condition. Next, let's go ahead and add some... let's add some infantry cards next. Actually, first, yeah, let's add some infantry. So, if you've watched any of my previous Let's Plays, you know by now that I'm a huge fan of infantry. They're cheap, you can put a lot of them in, and this means if you lose a few, which you're going to do because they're infantry, you can make up for it by getting because who cares? You have more infantry cards. You just draw more infantry cards, assuming you can get them. In particular, I love the Imperial Infantry, because they have extra attach, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So, let's cover all of these units, and we'll think about adding a few of them in here. So, this also means that we have to decide what type of deck we want to play, because we don't have to add any infantry if we don't want to. We can go ahead and just add power battle armor, and make ourselves, like an armor core company of just Space Marines. We could add all Imperial Guard to the deck. That would be 40 more points. A few tanks, maybe some air support, and we're done. And that would be amazing. It'd be a really tough army to beat. But also be expensive because of the unit cost here. And we wouldn't be able to get these cards out very quickly. But there you have it. So I'm going to stick with my standard type of deck to start, which I know is going to make Michael Janis kind of angry. Not angry, he's going to be like, oh, Tim, put some better cards in your deck. But for this starting deck, at least for the next like 5 to 8 videos of this, we're going to be using this deck. So, we have, in the humans, we have the Emperor's Own. At 3 points cost, it's a relatively, well, that's on the more expensive side for infantry. But it's a fantastic card, and you can tell because also it has a significant cost for infantry coming in here as well. Lots of human material and tech coming in to deploy one of these guys. They're 8 hit points, which is, hey, that's pretty damn good. 5 attack, that's... Actually, 8 hit points in infantry is phenomenal, now that I think about it. 5 attack, that's good on infantry. 4 defense, that's probably good as well on infantry. 2 resistance and 2 movement is standard. 1 range is also standard. They're fanatic, so they can spend a hit point to gain a huge amount of attack on their turn, letting them hopefully just annihilate an enemy by spending those hit points. They also become stronger every time something else on your team gets destroyed in the battle, so the enemy better be targeting them first, or otherwise, so let's say that we have one of these guys, for example, and 3 infantry, and the enemy kills 2 other Imperial infantry. This guy's now a 7 attack and 6 defense unit. So, these guys are really good. We're going to go ahead and add, I think, 4 of them. I have to do this. I have to. I must do what you're seeing me do. OCD compels me. Next, Imperial Grenadiers. They're also very expensive. Look at this, 3, 3, and 2. But they only have 4 hit points instead of 8. Their attack and defense is the same, though, as the Emperor's own, coming in at 5. Still only have 1 and have 2 movement. So this is okay. With 4 hit points, they'll die pretty easily, though. They do have shock attack, however, which is amazing. Shock attack means that if you actually damage the enemy, whatever card it was, doesn't get to do anything until the next entire combat round starts. Generally what happens, actually what always happens, is that you and your enemy during combat will alternate taking turns using every single card on the battlefield. Once every card has taken an action, or you've passed, decided not to do anything with that card, the entire combat round is over, and you do a whole other combat round. This will continue until you or your enemy has either been defeated or retreated from the fight. Shock attack means that if it damages an enemy, that card is already committed, which means that it's as if it had been used and it can't do anything. This is really good. Next, it's hyperkinetic, which means that this will do extra damage to armored targets, but it also does less damage against infantry. This is definitely used to take out enemy heavy armor cards. I normally don't add these to the deck, however, because they are very expensive to add, so we're not going to add these guys today. We have the Imperial Pioneers, also very expensive. Look at this, 3 human, 3 material, 2 tech. 3 points to add them, 4 hit points. 4 attack and 4 defense means they're slightly worse, but they have slightly more resistance, so better against fighting, let's say, the Xenopods. Only 1 range and 2 movement, but they have Engineer 5, which means that they can actually clear minefields and deploy minefields. I think they can also deploy structures in order to collect resources in the game. We haven't even covered that, and we'll cover that when we get to the game itself. Finally, they also have Assault 4, which means that they can increase their attack from 4 to 8. However, their defense is lowered by 2 for the rest of that round in which they use it, and they can't do anything at all on the next round. Still, that can be useful, but since I'm not going to be adding minefields to the deck, I won't be adding the Pioneers in this one. Imperial Infantry. Now, these, you can definitely expect me to add quite a few of these. 2 points, so 1 point cheaper. They are significantly cheaper resource-wise, however, to deploy them. Look at this. 2 humans, 1 material, and 1 tech? That's awesome. 4 hit points, that's standard. That's what all the other guys had. Although they're worse off in defense and attack. So these guys aren't really the strongest guys in the world, but they're cheap. They've also got extra attach, which means that we can put 2 different types of weapon systems on them if we want. We can give them like chain guns and a tactical nuke, bringing up their threat significantly. We're going to go ahead and add a few of these in. I think we'll start with, let's start with 6, and I'll probably add a 7th, depending on how many points I have left over. Yep, human infantry. Pretty darn good. And their movement is 2? Movement is 2. Good. So this lets me move at a decent speed on the game board. Next. Weapon platoons. Weapon platoons basically have 4 hit points as well. Almost no defense, but 6 attack. These are like your heavy weapon teams if you were playing the Imperial Guard way back in 3rd edition, which was the last time I played Warhammer 40k. Then I sold all my Tyranids for War Machine models instead. Anyway, right. These guys are pretty good. They also have Disrupt 2 and 1. So what this means is that, as you can read, if this actually damages the enemy, that enemy suffers -2 to its defense and -2 to its attack for the rest of the round. You generally want these guys going first. We're actually going to go ahead and add 3 of these. Okay, so we have a bunch of... we have a handful of tough cards and a few weak infantry cards in our deck. Let's now begin adding a few stronger things to our deck instead. So, oh wait, I haven't covered one last thing. Imperial Infantry. Extremely cheap to add the light infantry into the deck. Look at this, even cheaper than Imperials. However, they lose 1 point of defense, but they are fast, a movement 3. They also have fast deploy. This is the only thing I think in the game that lets you take a card and deploy it into an army that's not at a facility, that's a barracks. So this can be really useful to beef up your forces. Okay, let's add a few armor next to it. So, we have in the order of strongest to least strongest, or weakest, I suppose, least strongest, Tim? It's too late, I've been talking for 15 minutes or so, we're not editing out. We have the Moby V7 Elephant. This is basically a Bane Blade. Look at this amazing tank. Look at it. Look at the size of the person on the side of it. Awesome. It is 7 points to add one of these monstrosities to your deck. It is expensive action point wise to add to your deck. You are not deploying this unless you're going first. You'll see why when we get to the game. It is expensive to deploy technology wise. 4 energy, 4 tech, and 4 materials. It has 12 hit points, 12 attack, which means it's going to have multi-target. 8 defense, 4 resistance. It is fast. It can reach out and hit the enemy back line if it wants to. It can hit multiple things. And it also makes the enemy less powerful when it hits them. This is an awesome unit. You will add 2 of them to our starting deck. Welcome aboard, elephants. We're also just about halfway done. Actually, we are slightly over. Oh, I'm sorry. We are... Is that right? About halfway done with our deck creation so far as well. So we don't have too many more choices we can add here. Anyway, this is a really powerful card. And notice you can only also add 5 of them to your deck to help balance it out. Because, oh my goodness, this is incredibly strong. Tigers. Tigers are also very strong. And at 5 points, they're a really good bargain. They're expensive, almost as expensive. In fact, resource-wise, they're as expensive. Just 2 action points less expensive. They almost have a 7 hit points coming at 10. 7 attack and 7 defense is nothing to sneeze at, though you will occasionally still miss the enemy. Good amount of resistance, good movement, still has range. Breakthrough. If they damage an enemy on the enemy's front row, I think I already showed the rows and how combat would work. But if they damage the enemy on the front, they get a free attack on the enemy in the back rank as well at the full strength that they made on the front rank, and it ignores the enemy's rear area ability, which we haven't covered yet. Just know that this is an amazing ability whenever you see it, especially when you're fighting larger armies that the enemy has. Also, it's got shock attack, which makes this an amazing card as well. Let's go ahead and add 3 of these to the deck. Then we'll cover the rest of the armor as I quietly add them. Shh, no talking. No talking while the tankers get added. I broke that rule already. Panthers. Panthers are good. There are only 3 points to add them. 8 hit points, a decent amount of resources to deploy, but 5 attack and 5 defense with 3 movement, 2 range, and 3 resistance. These guys are actually really good. You could make a good argument that they're actually better than the Emperor's Own. 8 hit points and slightly more expensive resource-wise. However, they also don't cost any energy, which the Panthers do cost you. They're a really good tank, honestly. And I have made decks with used almost entirely armor with a handful of infantry instead of what you're seeing here. That said, I think I'm done with my vehicles, but let's cover the others anyway. Maybe I'm not. The leopards. Leopards are very cheap at 2 points. They have a very cheap amount of resources, so we can probably guess that these are not good frontline fighters. 6 hit points, that's decent enough. 4 attack and 3 defense, okay. They're basically kind of the same as our Imperial Infantry, but a little stronger hit point wise. 3 resistance, 3 movement, with 1 range and strength 5, range 1, reconnaissance. We haven't covered reconnaissance very much yet. Just know that this is an important thing to have in all your decks, and you will want some amount of your cards to have this. During the game, the enemy can stealth certain units, and we ourselves will have stealth units as well, I think. I haven't decided yet what other cards we're going to be adding to the game. Just know that this is the only way, reconnaissance is kind of the only way you get to actually discover stealth units. You won't pick them up otherwise, so you're gonna need some reconnaissance in your deck if you want to counter enemy stealth cards. And trust me, the AI uses stealth cards, and in quite a significant number of them. If nothing else, you want them to discover enemy agents, because they're gonna be walking around and killing your heroes, and that freaking sucks. We're gonna go ahead and add, I think, these to our... maybe add these to our deck? Let's hold off at the moment. Finally, we have cheetahs. No action points to deploy these guys. If you have a lot of infantry cards, cheetahs are pretty good. As you can see, you target a friendly infantry unit here, and it gets +3 attack and +3 defense at the end of the round. One unit also gains a movement point of 3 for the purposes of map movement. I like these guys, and since we're adding quite a few infantry, why don't we add, let's say, 3 of these to our deck to start. These can be used, assuming you get to go first, to like keep your weapons. Weapons to platoon would be Strength 9, Defense 5, for example, for a single round. It's amazing. They also have Rapid Reaction, which means that they don't cause any action points to move across the board. We'll cover that when we get to the game. Okay, so that's good for my armor at the moment. Next, Mecha. Mecha are your combat walkers. The humans have some, well, whenever you see walkers, they're generally really good anyway. So, we have the MEBU2 Vengeances. 7 points, they're expensive. Look at this cost. They're really expensive to deploy them onto the battlefield, but they are super strong. At 14 hit points, 10 attack, and 8 defense. They also have multi-target, and every point of damage they do does double damage to the enemy. We're gonna sneak one of these into the deck. Vindicators. So, these guys have decent amounts of hit points, good attack and defense. They're nothing to sneeze at, actually, and at 5 points, that's pretty decent. Shock attack. Love shock attack, it's really good. And they also have anti-air, one of the few ground units that actually has it. We're going to go ahead and add, I think we'll add 2 of these to the deck as well. Now, there's actually quite a bit more we need to cover for units. Or rather, I want to look at more of these. We haven't even looked at the battle armor yet, but probably not going to add it to the deck, given that we're already at 122 points. But we need to stop and jump ahead to heroes, because we haven't added any to our deck yet, and if we don't have any, we're effectively going to lose the game. So, heroes are used to help you collect resources. They are the only units, besides engineers, I believe, that can produce resource collectors in the game. So we absolutely must have them. And next, without generals in your armies are going to be significantly weaker than what the enemy's going to be wielding against you, because they are totally going to be using enemy heroes. So we need to begin adding heroes to the deck in order to wield the forces we currently have effectively in combat. Generals lead your armies in battle. So, I think we're going to be going ahead and adding the standard troops I add. So, Vladimir Kos is a pretty good general. He's for the most part, you're going to see what he has here. Wound points mean 4. He can probably take a hit from a sniper rifle, assuming that sniper doesn't have Slayer. He's an excellent commander with command rate of 8. 4 fate points is good. This is fantastic. He moves his army very quickly across the battlefield. He's also got movement 3 himself. He's aggressive, so he wants to be leading your charges against the enemy. And tactical cards don't cost you anything to play him. We'll go ahead and add him to the deck. Eric Mai. Looks like a cat all the time to me up there. I think that's supposed to be his the mask he's wearing. Some sort of gas mask under him. He's good too. 8 command, 5 fate. Oh, right, fate points. Fate points are important as well. Just know that this general has more fate. Master, Strategist, and Tactician. Because I'm adding the War Colleges into the deck, Eric Mai is a guaranteed addition. It's a good addition to any deck anyway. All the heroes generally are, with the possible exception of the final 2, which are kind of situational. We'll get to them when we reach them. Lucius Stark is fantastic. We're just going to add him, but I need to cover him really quick. Charismatic 1. He generates 1 human resource if he's on the game board to your force. That's amazing. Raider 2 means that his army can move a little bit further afield before being out of supply. And Military Genius means that everything in his army gets +1 to its attack and defense. There is no reason why you should ever skip on Ulysses Stark. Always add him to every one of your human decks. Do it. Do it. I can never pronounce this. I think it's a she. I can never pronounce her name. Honora Harris, I think, is how you get it. So, Trickster 2, which means that he can, or she can be really annoying to the enemy that's trying to pin her and her army down. Normally, when you engage in combat, you are forced to have 1 round of combat before you can retreat. And when you retreat, you generally are going to be pummeled trying to get out of there. She lets you retreat immediately and reduces the strength of the enemy's attacks while you're retreating, so she can help keep you alive and delay the enemy. She also has Tactical Genius. We'll add her to the deck. Her command rate's also 8, so she's also a good big leader. We have Winston Liu, Raider 2, Stealth 4, Tactician 4. Because he has Tactician, we're adding him to the deck. I definitely want all the Tacticians I can get. That's probably all the generals I need. I don't think I need another. We're going to look at the other 2 anyway. Carter Powell. He has a mechanic, which is really good. So he wants to be leading heavy armored companies. In fact, you can kind of see the theme of him back here. He can help repair things in his deck by making it cheaper. He also has Pathfinder, so it's cheaper to even move the forces he's leading. However, his command rate is only 6, so he can't lead as big of an army. So make sure if you decide to use him, you fill it with the most powerful things you can think of. Burwell Puller and Krulik Vandergrift. These guys have Jumpmaster. So if you're adding these guys to your deck, odds are you're going to be using the Imperial Marines in your deck as well. We haven't covered Imperial Marines. They are a really, really great card. But I'm not going to be adding them because I don't think I'll be adding either of these guys to my deck. Burwell Puller, as you can see, makes it cheaper for you to do jump attacks. We haven't done them. We won't be using them in this deck. But, well, sorry, but we won't be. And Air Ranger makes them even more, lets them reach further into the enemy's line. So, really a decent troop if you're going to be adding the Space Marines, basically, the Jump Marines, or Assault Marines, to your deck. Crew like Vandergrift is also the same with Jumpmaster 2. He's also got Chief of Staff, which makes him useful if you're just holding on to him back at your main base. He's also decent all around anyway, with 8 Command and 5 Fate. He's a pretty good guy to add anyway. But I've got my 5 Generals, I don't need another one added at this point. Scouts are used to help you hunt down enemy units that might be enemy stealth troops and or armies that are walking around causing you grief. I sometimes add a scout at the 175 point level. I haven't made up my mind yet what armor cards I'm adding, so I'm not sure if I'll add them in quite yet. Know that scouts have less command rate, only 4 for these guys, so they're not leading a huge army. Generally, it's going to be a small strike force that you're running around moving in your back of your line trying to hunt down enemies. Anyway, his army can move quickly. He can also enter stealth, and Bounty Hunter 2 means that it's easier for him to capture enemies. Simon Gordon helps the reconnaissance strength of everything in his army. He also has stealth, and he's not quite as good as hunting down enemies as Adam Wraith, but he's still pretty damn good. He also has 4 movement. Wow, he's extremely fast. Oh, he must be an Imperial Ranger. Yeah, he's an Imperial Ranger. We haven't even covered Rangers. We'll get to them, don't worry. Alright, so, not sure if I want to add one of these guys yet. Agents are used to do espionage or sabotage against your enemies. I generally always add one type of an assassin, and sometimes I'll add some sort of saboteur to the deck. We have Mata Boyd. She's excellent at blowing up enemies. Sabotage damage is triple with Demolitionist. She also has Saboteur, so she can attempt to this lets her actually use Demolitionist. And Espionage lets you patch in and see what the enemy's up to. And she has Stealth. I think we'll go ahead and add her. Next, I'm probably going to be adding... I think we'll add Carlos Pendergast, because he's got Tactician. So we should cover all of them, but we'll cover him right now because I'm going to add him. So, 2 command. He is not leading armies, by the way. Neither is Mata Boyd with only 2. They can have, I think, 1 or 2, maybe up to 2 units with them. Again, not a big army. Only if you're desperate is an agent going to be leading a force on the battlefield. However, he has stealth, so enemies can't detect him unless they have reconnaissance. He is Assassin 6, which means that he is capable of killing an enemy hero. He will roll 6 dice against the enemy's defense, and every point of damage over is a damage that they'll take. He's also got Tactician. Tactician 3. So let's go ahead and add him. There was one game which Carlos was the only thing that kept me around. The enemy was leading these huge armored death stacks of cards toward my base, and Carlos would pick off the leader, and then my army would swoop in when the leader was killed and demolish them, because without a leader, a large army suffers significant penalties, because they don't know what to do. They're out of formation. They're all stumbling over each other. It's like watching me play just about any real-time strategy game. So, he was fantastic and a critical VIP for those in that one video series of mine. Oh my goodness, whew! Never forget that. That was awesome. Valentine Kusanagi is basically an assassin and a saboteur. Obviously she does not have Tactician, and she doesn't have Demolitionist, so she's not as good at the blowing up stuff, but she can perform either role. And we have Artemis Vance. He is really good at espionage and a really fantastic stealth unit coming in at 7. He's also really good when it comes to increasing the capabilities of your deck in a passive way, because he's going to make it tough for the enemies to actually hit you with espionage, and he also gives you more action points if he's sitting in the same hex as an intelligence center. But I'm not going to be adding him to this deck. Maybe I should add him to the deck, actually, and take out Mata Boyd. Now, we'll pass. Finally, we have intellects. Intellects are not great generals, they are not good assassins, and they are miserable scouts. But all of these people are basically your administration. These are the units that are your scientists, your technologists, and your basic leaders, your politicians or what have you, and they are really helpful to add to your deck. You'll see me try to add as many of these to my deck as I possibly can. We have Vincent Mudge. He's got Chief of Staff, so as you can see here, you can hold more cards in your hand. And he increases the supply range of all your forces in the field by 2 if he's located at your HQ. We'll go ahead and add him. Next. Miss West. Makes it cheaper for you to draw cards, and makes it easier for you to create technology or genetic cards. Also increases your action points by 2 if in your HQ. She's really phenomenal, so we're going to add her to the deck. Now at this point, I'm up to 9 heroes. I only really want 2 more heroes, or I have to start taking heroes out of my deck. Let's see. Hannibal Zarkov can make technology and genetics, so I'm thinking we're going to add him. And finally, Albert... oh, I haven't described this. Right, so I guess we should cover this really quick. You must have Technologist in order to make technology cards, missiles, different types of weapons. You must have Geneticist if you want to make genetics cards, such as different serums to increase your combat strength, or if you were playing the Machine Empire, skin suits so you can stealth more efficiently. Albert Feynman, I believe, is supposed to be like Gordon Freeman. He's a master scientist and technologist. I'm probably... oh, you know what? Maybe I should pass on Cornelia West. While she's really good, I think I actually want more people who can produce technology rather than making it easier at the 175 point level. So we're going to hold off on getting Feynman at the moment. We have Milton Drick. I think this is supposed to be Milton from the Office Space type of the movie. In any case, he's Geneticist 5, which is fantastic, and Technologist 2, so he can do some technology. Let's add him to the deck. I think we'll add Fulton Strangeglove as well. He's got Technologist 4 and Tactician 4. Now, it just occurs to me, we have a ton of Tacticians in our deck. With this many Tacticians, I think we will actually take out Carlos Pendergast. And instead... we'll add Valentine Kusanagi. By the way, everyone, you may recognize a few of these people from... there's all sorts of different pop culture references throughout the entire game. I'm unfamiliar with some of them, and familiar with others. Like Hannibal Zarkov, I think this was the scientist in the Flash Gordon movie. Milton Jarick is the Milton from Office Space. Fulton Strangeglove is, I think, Mr. Strangeglove from How I Learned to Stop... was it Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb? I think that was what it was from the movie. And so there's all sorts of stuff like this throughout the entirety of the game. It's amazing. I love it when someone tells me, Tim, that's from this movie. Oh, I love it. It's great. Let's also save the game really quick. All right, so those are our heroes added. We have an extra 29 points to work with. That's not a lot of points. Let's see what we can add. We need Reconnaissance in our deck. We don't have any added. We've already looked at the Leopards earlier, and they're cheap. We also have Imperial Recons. They're slightly more expensive. They're not as powerful when it comes to combat, but they do have Reconnaissance Strength 6, Range 1, and Stealth 5. So these guys are invisible and can detect other invisible units as you move them about. But they're fragile. They can be easily taken out by any other enemy, so I'm still going to hold off on these guys. We also have the the powered armor. We could take Rangers. Rangers have stealth and stronger reconnaissance and are also a commando unit. They're really good, well, they're decent at combat with 4 attack and 4 defense. They're basically slightly weaker than Emperor's Own, and twice as expensive, and very expensive resource-wise to put out. But they're hard to pin down, tougher to kill than any of the other reconnaissance that the humans possess, generally. And Commando, which means that they can go anywhere they want with their 4 movement. I've yet to decide which reconnaissance I want to add to the deck, but I need to kind of make up my mind now. If I want to add these guys, I'm going to add 4 of them to the deck, which means that I'm practically out of points. It also means I'm relying on these guys to fill the reconnaissance role, which is kind of dangerous, now that I think about it. So unfortunately, no, we won't add these guys. I think we'll add the invisible recon cards. We'll add 4 of these to the deck instead. Maybe when we go up a level, we'll replace the recons with rangers, and also take Sigmund Gordon as well. Okay, so my reconnaissance choice is now picked. We've barely got like less than 20 points left, and we're so many units we haven't covered. So we have special op teams. We have commandos that can actually kill off enemy heroes. They can either do it from in combat, or can do it from not combat. That's kind of really important, actually. Vendor Pendergast and Valentine, they can't make their kill a hero during the middle of an actual engagement. They can only do it by trying to assassinate the enemy. The commandos can do it with Assassin. That lets you snipe them without entering combat. And Sniper lets you try to take him out on the battlefield. These are actually they're pretty decent, but Sniper 4 is actually really weak, all things considered. You'll need a lot of fate points if you want to win that. Imperial Fax increase the strength of your airstrike and your airstrike cards by a significant margin. They're really good. If you're going to add air cards to your deck, really consider adding Imperial Fax to your deck as well. They also have stealth, so they can kind of work as a reconnaissance unit in a weird type of way. They don't have reconnaissance themselves, but if the enemy can't detect them, and a big armor walks in that hex, they'll detect them for you. I have that made up my mind if we want to add air power to the deck. We really should add some air power to the deck, shouldn't we? Let's do it. Let's add 3 air cards to the deck. So, we have the Terminator 2s. This can also operate as a anti-air card, but we've already got 2 Vindicators and an air defense system, so I don't think we're going to need the Terminator 2s. The Joint Strike Fighters are pretty decent. They have 6 attack and... Oh, right, we should cover a little bit of this as well. When an air card attacks an enemy army, they don't generally get to decide what they hit. They make a strafing run and they're gone. Some cards, like this guy, has Precision Strike. He can actually say, no, I want to target that unit. So, and he operates as an air-to-air. So why don't we add 2 of these guys? And then finally, we want one more air power card. We have the Nightwing, which I think is the most broken air unit in the game. It is amazing. It only has 2 hit points, so if something strikes it, it's as good as dead. But stealth is unbelievably powerful. You see our anti-air 5? That would be strength 2 against a Nightwing that's trying to hit it. And the Nightwing has 7 defense and 3 fate. The enemy's not going to shoot one of these down unless it gets extraordinarily lucky. They are 4 points to add them to your deck, though, so they're really expensive to add, and they're expensive to use as well. We also have Crows. Crows are, they're okay at harassing. You've got a Strength 5, Range 0 Reconnaissance, which let you detect enemies that might be in the hex which you perform attack in. Our piercing is pretty decent on an air unit as well. We could add maybe one of these, or we could add 2 Nightwings, or 2 Crows or 1 Nightwing, but we're going to add the Nightwing. We might as well. Now, since I'm adding the Nightwing to the deck, I think we will add some Imperial Fax. This is going to make it a bit awkward, because I'm not going to have any battle support. Oh, you know what we could do, though, Tim? You could add the battle support instead. Okay, let's... we have to cover a few more things, though. So, we don't have the points to add Fax if I want to add more than 1 battle support. Let's go over battle support. Battle support cards are artillery pieces. These are not designed to be on the front line and slug it out with enemies. You want them secured in your back row when fighting the enemies off. Generally, battle support units will have rear area. This means if the enemy tries to hit them, the attack is at half its strength. So if the Vindicator, which has range 2, tries to strike a Grom, its strength goes from 6 to 3. Now, it's still likely to damage the Grom, and it may kill it, but it's not a guaranteed kill on the Grom. And so that can be really, really handy. You'll notice that probably all of these cards have low hit points, but good attack strength, and also somewhat low defense. So anyway, these are, as you can see, just flat artillery, area attack. So if they when they make an attack, they get an additional attack against another random unit in that row. So if they hit the enemy front line, another front line takes a hit if they on the enemy side. And the same thing for the enemy's rear side if they decide to do that instead. They also have Disable 2-2, which can keep your units alive a little bit longer. We have Reapers, 8 attack, so they're even better at it. But they don't get area attack, but they do have shock attack, which, as I've already described, is amazing. They also decrease the enemy's defense by 2 instead of their offense. Minotaurs have Disable 1 and Disrupt 2, so that's weakening the enemy's attack and defense by 1 point. They also have rear area, but only 6 attack strength. This is generally not strong enough to really damage the enemy. Especially, it's kind of weak for a battle support card. But it does have 3 hit points and 3 defense, which makes it very survivable, honestly. We have Pumas, which are flat anti-air. Mobile field posts. These are basically a walking supply. These will let your army move however much you want them moving, and it counts as if they're, well, in supply. You also can repair things if this is in that deck. In that army. I don't really like them, though, because they're really expensive to add even a single one to your deck at 8 points. And they can be killed really easily with 4 hit points and 4 defense. They also can't make any attacks whatsoever. We have the Artemis, which lets you increase the range of your missiles. This is really useful if you plan going the nuke the enemy route. I tend not to add them, though, if only because I tend not to have trouble taking the enemy bases out and then using their bases to help increase my supply range and then defeat the enemy that way. And we have the Ozymandias, which actually works as a mobile, incredible resource collector. But it's really expensive to add it to the deck, so you will very rarely, if ever, see me add one of these to a deck of mine. Finally, we have the Battle Armor, which I'm just not going to add to this deck at this point. The Imperial Marines are fantastic. 8 hit points, 7 attack, and 5 defense, but really expensive resource-wise to put them into play. 3 defense is also great. Range 3 is phenomenal. They can hit the enemy back rank from your back rank. Air Assault means that they can jump, so they can move over any type of terrain to reach their location, assuming they do it from a barracks or a supply, I think. And Double Attack means that when they attack an enemy, they get to make 2 Strength 7 attacks against that same target. They are really good. We've already covered Rangers briefly. These guys are really good too. The Imperial Guard are fantastic defensive units with 9 hit points and 7 defense. Finally, they can add their defense to their attack rate, but then they blow themselves up afterwards. When also they're killed, they get 1 less attack at strength 6 against their attacker, I think. It also stops the enemy from using multi-target if they were using it. These are all really powerful cards. And the only reason I'm not adding them is because I have enough infantry, and they're more expensive to add resource-wise. So we're going to add some battle support, and I think we can add 1? 2 Groms? We can add 2 Groms in, and that will do it for our battle support. Okay, everyone. That is the human condition deck of ours. 11 heroes, 30 units, 15 facilities, and 3 air. May have too many units. Well, we'll give it a shot. So now the fun part is that we need to figure out if this deck is actually able to win a battle. So, following up this video, in the next video will be where we take this for a spin, and we get to see how well it does out in the field of combat. Hopefully, we do at least decently enough. We'll find out when we play. Thank you all for watching the deck creation. Hopefully, some of it made sense to you guys. At the very least, I'm hoping that the total cards, total points made sense, and I covered all the basics of the cards correctly. In the next video, you'll get to see me use this deck in combat, and you'll get to see why on earth all this matters. All right, everybody, I will see you then. Thank you for watching this deck creation. It is going to be amazing to play this game again, and I will see you in combat. See you guys then.